In this social experiment run between seagulls to kindergarten kids, the group that ranked the lowest was MBA grad.
Volunteering is the most authentic leadership lab.
One of the key 21st century skills we need to master is empathy and collaboration.
With volunteering, you can build these cool skills while bettering the world.
Two founders walk into with Satish Manchikanti and Ajit Sivaram. Execution is not a hustle. When you grow people, you grow everything. Two founders walk into.
Majority of my college life was spent outside of class, missing a lot of lessons, tutorials, all of that.
Explains a lot.
Yeah, and the fact that now technically I run a non-profit which works in the education space is extremely dubious because of that. But one of the pros of actually being outside of class, of not being in the classroom, was learn so many life lessons outside of it.
Poof, that's one way to put it.
Yeah, and real life lessons. Because sometimes when you think of today's day and age, volunteering, fellowships, there's so much that is happening outside the traditional classroom. Outside of MBAs, outside of whatever masters you want to do. And sometimes that gets downplayed. That gets given this second grade treatment that the MBA got from the 90s to the 2000s to where it is today. Because if you think of it, 41% of hiring managers actually value volunteer work experience. They look for that in resumes and CVs today. 92% of employees actually say that they believe volunteering improves their professional skills. So the statistics are in the favor of outside the classroom. Yay to us. But I think, why do we still trust a case study in a textbook more than a real world life experience? Why is that tension with us today?
Yeah. I'm reminded of a story I've heard John Maxwell share a long time ago, and it stayed with me. He talked about how, he was doing this leadership conference, and end of the conference, one of the CEOs walked up to him and said, hey, I'm in kind of a situation where I'm going to retire in next 6 months. And there are two people who are extremely promising, and I don't know who I should hand over the reins to. And what John Maxwell told him completely surprised him, because John Maxwell said, hey, here is an idea. Ask both of them to go lead a non-profit project for next 6 months and see who does well. And whoever does well, that's the person you need to pick.
Nice.
And the thinking behind that, as he explains, is that in a non-profit world where you're working with volunteers, you're trying to bring different stakeholders together, if you're able to lead there, where you're not the boss, they're not following you because they're paid to, that changes the whole thing. If you learn how to inspire, how to get people in a room, how to get them to have a shared goal, that completely changes the way you lead.
Yeah. And without downplaying classroom, I feel like classroom learning has its benefits also. You definitely get a lot of the frameworks, a lot of the stuff we use in our everyday running of U&I of Change Plus, of all of that. It's good in some sense to have a structured curriculum to take people from a to see.
For sure.
But what a classroom lacks is that practical skill building. There's nothing like having your first conflict resolution conversation with a colleague or with a boss, or trying to inspire a bunch of volunteers who have no other reason to be there apart from their cause. And problem solving, all of these things, empathy. And I feel like when you only do one classroom, you miss out on all of these other tangible elements, which in the age of AI is becoming so much more relevant.
It's very profound. And unfortunately, especially in India, academics is given so much importance. There's not enough space to kind of do more practical stuff. And I love how you talked about, classroom and not discounting that, which is very true, because we are great believers in learning. And that's what we do for a living. But the way I see it is MBA gives you a toolkit. But when you do something like volunteering, it holds up the mirror to you, because you're really taking that toolkit and putting it to work. When you serve, one of the things it does is you stop asking, what am I achieving? What do I get out of it? And you start asking, who am I becoming in the process? So in that way, volunteering is a very sort of identity building work, which is very important. Now, if you remember, when we were thinking through the whole branding of U&I, one of the things we had to do was come up with a tagline, and we had two options: make a difference and be the change. After a little bit of back and forth, we went with be the change, because we believed that volunteering is a becoming process, not doing process. And that kind of became an ethos for us because we really believe that volunteering can be very transformative. It rewires how you look at patience, empathy, humility. It's the most authentic leadership lab that you're going to have.
And it changes who you are profoundly. It changes your outlook on life. It changes how you see people. It exposes you to a whole different side of India. You can ask any TFI fellow who's done 2 years of that fellowship, a Gandhi fellow, any of them. When you work in this space for a year or two and you give, it radically transforms your inner being. You get empathy and perspective like you've never seen. You see a side of India you have never experienced. You understand what it is to, from being a receiver most of our lives to now being the giver, and being in a place of how do I self-regulate my emotions? How do I put somebody else's needs above mine? How do I show resilience even when I don't want to show up to, whether it's a school or a class or whatever it is, how do I show up and give? And then how do I work together with all these different stakeholders, the child, their parent, or other volunteers or leaders? How do I work with them and create change?
I think one of the things you mentioned is empathy. Empathy is kind of talked about so much today. It's called the 21st century skill. And when you look at, we have a lot of these conversations around how education system is getting left behind. What are the 21st century skills? I think one of the key things to remember is in 20th century, your productivity was your success. But in 21st century, the reason something like empathy has become so important is because your success depends on how much you collaborate, because most things we create today are far more complex. Whether you're building a software, are you building a platform, you need to be able to collaborate with so many different people. And that requires you to have that empathetic view and look beyond just what is my win here, but what is everyone else's win. And volunteering really gives you the muscle to be able to practice that. When you get an opportunity to work with different kinds of people, with different agendas, different worldviews, and that's really the volunteering space. And when you get to practice that, you take so much back to whether your work or MBA, whatever else you do.
Absolutely. And then when you think of the non-profit space, when you're a TFI fellow or a U&I fellow or even a Bhumi fellow, you're always working with constraint. You do not have influence, you do not have hierarchy, you don't have position, you're the bottom of the pyramid, but you still are called to create change.
And you're bootstrapped.
Yeah, and you're completely bootstrapped from resources to influence to so many things. And you've got to work with all of these constraints and figure out life and still create something that you can look back and say, hey, that was amazing. And I think it pushes you so much more, takes everything that an MBA should have and actually makes you live it, try it, practice it, fail at it, and then say, okay, I can get better at it. One of the interesting things, if you remember the game we played, the spaghetti and the marshmallow game, this guy did play the game where build spaghetti sticks and marshmallows on top and build that tallest tower. He played with thousands and thousands of teams across the world. And from children to college students to CEOs, the group that ranked the lowest was MBAs really.
B school.
B school grads, because they were great at head knowledge, but could not execute a simple task. When you're bootstrapped, it changes the way you approach something.
And in contrast, children were one of the top performers in that experiment. I love that. I think one of the things, just picking up on what you're saying, when you have to bootstrap, when you have to work with constraints, that means you have a bunch of people you're leading and there are so many constraints. How do you motivate them in spite of the constraints? And that's becoming a big need, because I think we are a generation that is looking beyond profits today, and that's not enough. Today's generation wants meaning and purpose. Volunteering is again a great prototype in just in terms of how you get people to, how you cast a vision, how you show meaning and purpose in what you do. And when you get to lead in that space where it's purpose driven, you again learn how to lead differently. And that's extremely important.
And what we're seeing at least is it's going beyond the individual. It's not just for the average 20-something-year-old to start volunteering. It's great for individuals that they find that purpose, they find what's next for them, they get a whole bunch of skills, which are very useful, but also companies are seeing the use case for it today. I know IBM, they did some research for IBM has something called a corporate service corps, and they send employees to volunteer in international projects. And their research showed them that the employees who actually returned, they came back with sharper leadership skills than those who didn't go on that project.
Interesting.
And so you can see that it's having transformative impact across the board. And you think of it, if you have enough young people, middle-aged people, senior citizens volunteering today, there's that many more people who are socially conscious, who want to contribute, who want to help out, who want to solve the problems that are around them. And that problem-solving mentality of, hey, let me take it on and serve, is something that you're never going to find in a classroom.
Very true. If I could have $1 for every time a volunteer has told us that how volunteering changed their life and added so many skills, and how I could get a job because I talked about my volunteer. I could get into a college because I talked about volunteering, and amount of reference letters you have written to any Ivy League college you can talk about, from Harvard to Oxford, I would be a millionaire. But I think that is something to remember. You talked about how it benefits individuals and companies, but I want to give you a lens of how it could benefit India. India, we talk about the whole demographic dividend. We are the youngest country in the world. About 65% of India is in that working age population, or we are getting there at least. And what do you do if you're able to use that 65% of India, even a percentage of that, if you can motivate them to give back, to volunteer, to teach, to mentor, to build communities, how transformative that can be for India, and how transformative it can be for that 65%. Because here is your opportunity to build those B-school skills, whether you talk about leadership, empathy, collaboration, while bettering the world.
I love it, yeah. And I think maybe the next time someone asks, where did you get your MBA? I hope someone can answer, from teaching 50 kids at a U&I center, or from organizing Frederick with no budget, or from leading a team of volunteers who could have walked away at any moment. I think that is powerful. If we're able to say, hey, I served here for 2 years, and this is the way my life changed after that. Because leadership isn't so much about, honestly, the degrees you have, the letters after your name. It's about the lives you've touched. It's about the people you've impacted. It's about understanding how to really inspire, lead, show empathy, and drive results too. I really want to see a generation of leaders for the future who want to serve, who want to give, and who want to genuinely change India.